Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going on a really fascinating journey today, tracing the path from a viral internet joke all the way down to a profound and scientifically validated psychological truth. We're going to unpack the intersection of pop culture and cognitive science by looking at the Karen meme and how it perfectly, absolutely perfectly illustrates an ancient concept known as the Solomon paradox. So, why are we so blind to our own bad behavior? Honestly, this is the core tension of our entire explainer. There's this jarring, kind of wild disconnect between our own self-righteousness and how the rest of the world actually sees us. You know, when we look in the mirror, we often see a hero making totally reasonable demands. But when others look at us, well, they might see something entirely different.
And that brings us to the Karen. Now sure, it's a slang term, but it's actually evolved into a really powerful behavioral mental model. A Karen describes a very specific pattern of entitlement, mixed with this blatant contempt for other people's boundaries. The crucial point here, and we really need to emphasize this, is the absolute lack of self-awareness and the overt self-righteousness in this person's own mind. They genuinely, truly believe their personal discomfort trumps everyone else's rights.
Section 1. The Mind of a Karen. You know, long before it was a meme, this was just a basic human reality. The author of our source newsletter, who we affectionately call Papa, shared this really intimate story about his late father, Papa Q-Bear. When they'd encounter difficult, entitled people out in public, Papa Q-Bear used to tell him, "Be polite, son, but don't pay them any mind. They are just mean." It's a beautifully grounding reminder that long before smartphones and social media, we were navigating these exact same tense, unself-aware public encounters. So how did this specific name become so universal? Well, the seeds were planted in pop culture. It started with a character in the 1990 film Goodfellas, then an iconic line in 2004's Mean Girls, and then a 2005 Dane Cook comedy routine about the friend nobody likes. By 2014, Black Twitter had coined the famous "speak to the manager" haircut, and finally, in 2020, amidst the pandemic and racial justice protests, all these threads just kind of merged. The meme exploded as this ubiquitous shorthand for a very specific type of unself-aware public policing.
Section 2. The Science of Solomon's Paradox. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how we shift from internet culture into ancient history. Meet King Solomon. He was the third leader of the Jewish kingdom, famously portrayed as a total paragon of wisdom. I mean, people traveled from all over the known world just to seek his objective counsel. Yet, when it came to his own life, he made terrible, foolish personal choices that ultimately led to the downfall of his entire dynasty. And this right here is the Solomon paradox. It's the crazy reality of being an incredibly wise advisor to others, but an absolute disaster of a decision-maker for yourself.
Think of it like this. When we look at someone else's problems, we are objective and wise. We see the whole forest, right? But when we look at our own problems, oh man, we get completely lost in a forest of ego. Our perspective shrinks way down. We become egocentric, narrow, and deeply, deeply defensive. Humans are just objectively terrible at reasoning through our own interpersonal conflicts.
And this isn't just some neat philosophical idea, it's hard science. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Psychology looked at multiple studies and found an effect size of 0.317. To put that into perspective for you, in the world of psychology, this is a significant scientifically validated proof. It proves the Solomon paradox is a very real, measurable phenomenon in human interpersonal conflict.
Now you might be wondering, is this just a Western problem? Well, the data says no. While Eastern collectivist cultures traditionally emphasized interdependence, which should theoretically reduce this bias, modern global individualism has created what researchers call a compromise state. This shift toward individualism means this paradox is now a universal human trap. It totally transcends gender, age, and culture. Every single one of us is susceptible to it. So how do we fight our own brains on this? The psychological data gives us a really practical toolkit for wise reasoning. First, it requires us to practice intellectual humility, to actively seek compromise, to literally force ourselves to take an outsider's perspective, and, maybe hardest of all, to recognize the limits of our own knowledge. We have to purposefully step outside of ourselves to actually find wisdom.
Section 3. The Ultimate Blind Spot. Imagine being trapped in a house of mirrors. Everywhere you look, you only see reflections of your own needs, your own discomfort, and your own perspective. You completely lose the ability to zoom out. This is exactly what's happening in those viral videos. A Karen is the ultimate overt manifestation of Solomon's paradox. They are entirely trapped in a feedback loop of their own self-righteousness, completely incapable of viewing their actions from a third-party perspective.
The contrast here is just staggering.
On one side, the Karen mindset is fueled by absolute certainty, high emotional intensity, and a laser focus on personal discomfort. But on the other side, the wise bystander, which is the mindset the science tells us we actually need, relies on distance from the self, evaluating the overall situation, and impartial observation. The whole viral meltdown happens precisely because that self-distance completely collapses.
We can think of this as the fog of righteousness. It's this rising tide of self-justification. When someone gets lost in this fog, they honestly don't see themselves as creating a scene. Actually, they genuinely frame their own unreasonable demands as a helpful moral duty. They believe they are the hero of the story, entirely blind to the harm they are causing to service workers, bystanders, or really just people trying to live their lives.
Section 4. Humility and self-awareness. Okay, so here are the practical steps to step out of that fog in your own life. First, when conflict arises, hit pause. Just stop. Second, mentally put yourself in the shoes of a third party observing your actions. And third, consult your trusted voices. Papa humorously notes that seeking the grounded wisdom of his spouse, Colonel Debs, is exactly the kind of reality check needed to keep the ego in line. You need to find your own Colonel Debs and actually listen to them.
I really want to share this warm, closing philosophy from Papa. He notes that the people called Karens are often just regular people who failed to check themselves. Honestly, it's a trap anyone can fall into. He writes, "The issue is evident, and the solution is to practice the humility and self-awareness that the gospel teaches us. It requires intentional, grace-driven effort to overcome our own blind spots." I'll leave you with this final thought to take with you today. How will you practice self-awareness today? The next time you feel your ego flaring up, the next time you feel absolutely 100% certain that you are right and everyone else is wrong, remember King Solomon, remember the House of Mirrors. Take a breath, step back, and look at yourself from the outside. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it helps you navigate the world with just a little more wisdom.